Welcome to Life and DNA with Amanda Renee. I'm so glad you joined me today. Let's get started. Um, I wanted to go over a couple of little updates from the last few times. Life has been a little crazy, so I have not made one of the Trim Healthy recipes yet, but I am going to be making one of them tonight. Probably the Slim Sloppy Joes. I'm just going to show you. This is what their cookbook looks like. And in order to make it actually slim, you're supposed to use one of their breads. I won't show you the whole recipe and give everything away, but that's what it'll look like. It won't be an official Trim Healthy recipe because I'll be using buns and making some fries in the air fryer to go with it. And, buns from the store are not allowed on plan unless, it's for kids. And fries made out of white potatoes wouldn't exactly be on plan either. But at least it's not a canned sloppy joe sauce from a store full of preservatives and things. So it'll be at least a little healthier. The one I'm excited to make either tomorrow or Friday, I record this on Wednesday, is cilantro lime burst chicken. They make it with thighs. I'll make it with chicken breast just because that's what I like to cook with. And they have it over cauliflower rice. And if I have some of that in the freezer, I'll use that for me. But otherwise, I can make brown rice and still be somewhat on plan. But I was going to just kind of give an update on that. I keep forgetting to give my husband and I, the essential amino acids. We took it that once, and I have been forgetting to do that. Let's see. I have found, because I was trying to, one of the snacks that's allowed on plan is Greek yogurt with berries, and you can add stevia. They recommend I don't remember the name of the brand, but it's like a 0%, I think it's 0% fat, I think is what it is. So it has protein in it, so it's a good, healthy snack. But I noticed when I started having that before bed, I will sleep really, really good. And so I've been trying to have at least a little bit of that before bed every night. Because sometimes I struggle with sleep. So, all of that. And then I, health-wise, had a doctor's appointment yesterday. I asked her if I could quit taking my hormone pill. I'm curious to know what my hormone levels are now. So she said if I want to get off of it, I risk, having really heavy periods and getting anemic again. But she said that if I want to just kind of see what my body's going to do right now, I can get off of it, and then she'll test my hormones in about a month and then let me know what they are. So that's my plan. Sometime soon I'm going to get off of it, and then hopefully I won't have to get back on it. But I guess we'll see. The other thing I wanted to talk about, I hadn't really talked about on my YouTube channel yet. And if you're listening to this on my podcast, I also have a YouTube channel. And I haven't talked much about the DNA side since I had the YouTube channel. So I was going to talk a little bit about why I actually started this podcast. I love genealogy, and there's a branch of that called genetic genealogy. And there is a lady named C.C. Moore, and she's one of the more famous genetic genealogists. She's one of the ones that pioneered, just even pioneered the job title of that. And she works with a company called Parabon, and Parabon is the DNA genetic side, and then she is the genealogist, and she will take she'll take DNA results. She's been solving a lot of like murder cases, old cold files, like from years and years ago, as long as they have DNA evidence that they saved. She is taking that, and the police, all they have had at their disposal was CODIS. So anybody that was booked in jail or in prison from a certain period, I don't remember what year they started that, their DNA would be entered into a system. So if they were arrested previously, then their DNA is in there. But, with many cold cases, the person that committed the crime hadn't necessarily been arrested before. And so they take their DNA and find relatives and build a family tree, and she can kind of work backwards to give them sometimes exactly who it would have to be, or depending on how many kids in the family, a certain number of family members to look at, and then the cops go and track down, get a DNA sample somehow, and can decide, okay, we have the right person, and make an arrest. And it's just fascinating to me. She's had several shows on TV where she's helped solve cases, and it's just really interesting to me. But I am not in a position where I can solve a bunch of things like that. I'm not in a city where they would use that necessarily. And so I just started with my husband and I's family trees. When it's when my husband's grandparents had their 50th wedding anniversary, and his grandma's sisters came down. I believe that's the first time I heard the story about their dad, Walter. And we're talking 13, 14 years ago. So I was a new mom, exhausted. My brain was not on genealogy at the time, even though I've always loved it and have been fascinated with it for years. Ancestry wasn't where it was. They didn't have the DNA tests right then. Not as readily accessible. So when I heard the story, I just kind of filed it away, and I didn't think a whole lot about it until later, when I wanted to research my husband's family tree, so that I could pass that information on to our kids someday. But his great-grandpa, named Walter, was abandoned on a train at like 5 days old. That's what the doctors at the time assessed his age to be. And I was like, that's crazy. That's sad. And it was also interesting. So he never knew who his parents were. He was adopted and took their last name. And so when the DNA test kits started becoming more popular and cheaper, I decided I wanted to solve this mystery, because as far as I know, nobody in the family had. My husband's family isn't exactly close with some of those cousins. I don't think he's ever met them. They live in another state. And so I think they just grew apart. His grandpa was in the military, so when they moved down here, his wife, was separated from a lot of her family, and so they just grew apart, and so he doesn't know his cousins on that particular side. So I decided, well, I want to solve this. Unfortunately, we didn't get his grandpa to take the DNA test that his daughter had bought him before he passed. I hate that we didn't get that, but we didn't. And so my husband and I got each other tests a few years ago and took those and sent them off. And then I got my father-in-law to take one. And when we got the results back, I was extremely happy to see, and I probably wouldn't have been able to solve it without it. One of his grandma's sisters had also done DNA testing, and so she popped up as the closest match before his dad took his test. And I was so excited because I really don't think I would have been able to solve it without her to compare DNA matches with. There was also, I think, one of the other sister's daughters was on there, which helped. And I really wish that had we known that side of the family a little better, and they knew who I was, and they could have trusted me with it. I was trying to reach out to get access to the great aunt's account, just so that I could see who all she matched with, because there would be matches that she would have that even my husband wouldn't, and I probably could have solved it a little faster if I would have had access to her DNA, because she's only twice removed from Walter's parents, whereas, my husband's father is 3 times removed, and then my husband is 4 times removed from them. And every time you dilute that, you dilute the DNA by half. So it would have been nice to have access to that. But again, they didn't know me. And not everyone checks their messages on Ancestry, which is unfortunate. Check your Ancestry messages, please. And respond to them if you get one. Because there are a lot of people like me out there just trying to figure things out and answer questions. And so it'd be really helpful if people answered their messages. Let's see. What else was I going to talk about? So when I started researching, I found a few documents on Ancestry and found out his date of birth, or at least what he believed his date of birth to be. And then I can't remember how I figured out to look at it, but I got on newspapers.com and typed in, baby left on a train, put in the date range of when he was born, and found several articles about him, and got a ton of information just from those articles. I found out that the people on the train believed the mother to be about 25. She was dressed nicely, wearing a lot of diamonds, apparently. And I'm so thankful that I found those. That little tidbit of information actually helped me to narrow down who the mother was. And I would not have been able to solve this without newspapers.com. Not that I'm affiliated with them in any way. But I would not have been able to solve it without the information that I got in there. And so apparently the mother brought the baby in a big lunch basket, and nobody knew there was a baby. She was just kind of quiet and to herself. She got on the train in Little Rock, Arkansas, I believe, and was on the train overnight, and I guess nobody ever heard a baby that anyone that they interviewed recollected. And the next day at one of the stops at Poplar Bluff, Missouri, she snuck off and left the basket in the seat. And then I believe sometime in between there and when they got to St. Louis, they discovered there was a baby in the basket. And he had a note attached to him, and she asked that the people would help a poor mother out and take him to the foundling home or the orphanage. I don't remember how she worded it exactly, in St. Louis. And after figuring out who she was from around Kansas City, Missouri, and or Salina, Kansas, and Kansas City. She lived around there, and she did live in Missouri at one point. I believe after she was married, she lived in Missouri. So they took the baby there. I have tried to find the police records, but the police records from that time period were burned in a fire. So all I had to go on, and I keep dropping the ball on trying to get records from the foundling home that he was taken to, because it's no longer operational. So I'm trying to track down where those documents are stored and get someone to help me look at them. I do, however, have one of his adoption certificates, which was really cool. But anyway, getting ahead of myself. He was left at the foundling home. In her note, she named the baby. She named him Clarence Albert. Now, I don't know if the note got put into police evidence or what happened to it, or if the foundling home just had a policy of changing babies' names. I don't know, but they named him Whitcomb Brooks. And so that's what he was named. And when he was 3, he was adopted by a German couple. I believe they owned like an ice cream shop. They didn't have any kids, and they had been married several years. And I believe, and I've been in contact with one of their relatives, like a great granddaughter or something. And that's kind of what she always assumed too. She had heard of Walter, and she had assumed that, it was probably because they were married at least 7 years without having kids. And so they adopted him when he was 3. And not long after they adopted Walter, and they changed his last name. They changed his name from Whitcomb Brooks. They changed it to Walter and their last name. But not long after they adopted him, they actually started having children. And you're talking, he was born in 1906. So you're talking 1909 on up. So, people didn't have a ton of money. And after they had him, he believed it was when he was 12, but according to census records, unless somebody was lying on a census record, it was when he was closer to 14. They had to take him back to the foundling home. And not long after that, he was adopted again. And I don't know if it was more for, because I do know sometimes they would adopt older boys to help out either in whatever work the father did or to work the farm. I don't know if it was that kind of a situation or not, because he was already, older by this time. And that's kind of unusual for a teenager to be adopted, unless I think it was for something like that. So he was adopted, and that was the last name he took for the rest of his life. And that was the name that got passed down to my husband's grandmother. And when he got married and had his first son, I found a newspaper article that he had put in the paper as an adult of him looking for his parents. And he gave, the information about it was found on the train. He was reaching out to anyone that may have been on that train. And the heartbreaking thing is that he still had hope that his mom had accidentally left him on the train. And it didn't turn out, I guess, that was the case. And I am getting ready to, a couple months ago, but with the holidays I didn't have time to deal with it yet. I got my father-in-law to give me the address to his aunts, which would have been Walter's daughters, and I'm going to write to them. I'd like to get some pictures. I'd like to know a little bit more about Walter as a person, what he was like, because after studying him, I'm just curious to know what he was like, because it just breaks my heart what he went through, as a kid. But through all of that information, I was between that and then using DNA and matches. It took me about 1.5 years, 2 years to do it, but I finally narrowed down who his parents were, and that was so exciting. To check my work, I reached out. There is a Facebook group called DNA Detectives, and they have search angels on there, people to help you. And I reached out to one, and I gave them access to some of my stuff, and I was like, I just want you to check my work. This is what I think is the case. Am I correct? Am I in the right direction? And she had me check a couple of things, make sure that I had the right, that I didn't have the parents swapped, the families swapped. And so I double checked all of that. And then she checked my work again, and she was like, yeah, you're definitely on the right track. She believed, because between the mom, it was one of 2 sisters. She believed it was the younger one, just because that typically made more sense. And it would, except while I was researching the 2 sisters on newspapers.com, I found the year before Walter was born, the older sister, and remember, the people on the train thought she was around 25, and this particular woman was around 25 years old. But the part they said about her wearing diamonds stood out to me, because the family I was researching, they weren't like poor by any means, but they weren't like well-to-do. And the father, I've just found out recently after researching him, he was a Civil War veteran and a carpenter. So he wouldn't have, been able to afford his daughters to go just run around in diamonds. There were several newspaper articles about this particular girl, and she had, a few years before, she was in a lawsuit over some jewelry. And a few years before, she had been engaged to this man who turned out to be not a very nice guy. Apparently, she was already engaged to him before she found out, well, he was already married to somebody in New York. And he was going to go on a trip and get a divorce. Well, then she kind of never hears from him again. Sorry. She never hears from him again until, I think, a couple years later. She runs into him in the street, and he's with a different woman, and he won't talk to her. And it turns out he ran off and got married to a third person, to someone else, and just jilted her. And then all of a sudden, now that he had this new wife, he sent his lawyer to try and get the jewelry back from the woman I believe to be Walter's mother. And she said she sounds pretty feisty, actually. She said in the newspaper article that, if he had been man enough to come and ask for them himself instead of sending his lawyer to try and bully her, that she probably would have handed him over. But she figures he gave them to her. He didn't say it was a loan. He gave them to her as his fiance. So she thinks she has the right to keep them. And so she was going to take it to court and fight. He had already sued to get them back, and she was going to see it through, and she thought she had a right. And the articles say that the jury was entirely made up of men, mostly married men. There was one bachelor, and they deliberated all of 5 minutes and came back and said, yeah, she gets to keep all the jewelry. So, fast forward to the next year, when Walter is left on the train, and the lady is wearing lots of diamonds. So, I thought that was really, really cool. And so fun, because it helped solidify, to me at least, unless, if you fought that hard for the diamonds, I don't think you're going to give them to your sister. I think it's possible, but I am pretty sure she was the one that was the mother. And not long after that, she got married and ended up having other children, who I've been trying to reach out to, the grandkids and great grandkids, and so far can't get anybody to answer me. On the father's side, it was between a couple of brothers, but thanks to several members of that family having DNA on the website, I could narrow it down to who I believe the father was. That family, I am having trouble tracing back further. I have a feeling there might be another mystery there somewhere, but until just the right person submits their DNA and I have new matches to look at, I haven't been able to quite figure out where that line goes. But I have the father's name, and I've reached out to, like I said, one of his great-granddaughters, and they were actually going to try to get me some pictures. I have not heard back from them in several months, so I don't know if maybe they decided this was a can of worms they didn't want to open. I don't know. I mean, it was so long ago, I don't see why it would be an issue, but it's not my family member, so I'm not going to judge. I just would really love to be able to see a picture of what the parents look like. So it would be awesome someday if just the right person gets handed down some pictures, if they would share them with me, because I would love to be able to pass that down to my kids and show my husband's family all of that. But yeah, I'm hoping that reaching out to my husband's great aunts, that I can get more information on Walter. If I do, I will maybe talk about it. I'm not going to talk about anything personal if they don't want out, but I just think it'd be interesting to know a little bit more about him. I know his childhood story somewhat, and it would be fun to just kind of know what kind of man he grew up to be, and if they know of any answers that he got from that newspaper article, because I haven't found anything in the newspapers that said whether he did or not, but I guess it's possible that some people reached out. He had given his address at the time, so it is possible that someone reached out, and that would be awesome too. That would really help me in my research. Another thing, that was the first family mystery that I got to solve, and along the way I discovered a first cousin that my husband didn't know he had, and we're in touch with her, and she's awesome, and we're hoping to get to meet sometime soon. But I got her a an ancestry test. She had already tested on 23andMe, which is where I found her. But from a research standpoint, it's really hard to do research on 23andMe. So, especially now, since they had that data breach and they've taken off some of the features. So I waited for the ancestry kits to go on sale, and I got her one and sent it to her, and helped her figure out who her father was, since it was my husband's aunt who was her mother. And that was exciting. I got it narrowed down to 3 brothers, and then she reached out to a cousin match on that side, and she helped her narrow it down further. And so that's been exciting, and I hope all of that goes really well for her. But like I've said in other videos, if any of you out there have a family mystery you'd like to solve, or if you just got a DNA kit for Christmas and you're getting the results in soon, or have gotten them back but you don't know what to do with them, you can email me. My email address is in the show notes, or message me on Instagram, and I would love to help solve a mystery or help you just get DNA figured out, because it's exciting and it's fun. And I'm gonna get those tools, those pro tools that Ancestry has out now, and try them soon. I just have been waiting till I actually had time to play around with them, and I have not had that lately. So I am hoping to get to do that soon, and then I will make a video about that. But yeah, I just wanted to just make a podcast and a video about what gave me the drive to even start this podcast and this channel in the first place, and that is my love of genealogy and DNA. And so next week, if I have anything new genealogy wise, I will make a video about that. If not, I will let you know how the Trim Healthy recipes go this week, and I'm hoping they turn out delicious. I believe I've made a couple of these before, so they should turn out pretty good, and I will let you know how those go, and I will talk to you later. Thank you for joining me today on Life and DNA with Amanda Renee. I will see you back here next week. Bye.